And she was literally telling me, "You're crazy and I'm not gonna go and look for you in prison once you get there." In 5 years, we've grown from 0 to 15 and from 0 to €1.5 million. We have to master the technology our clients are using, and then we have to master the regulation that applies to them. The European Union has actually acknowledged that it's a new class of assets and it has its own regulation. It does not kill innovation, but it does reduce the opportunities for small companies to comply. Banks and regulated entities don't have a tech culture by definition. These things need to happen because we need to see the real risks of crypto. Cyber resilience may be the most important aspect of building protocols or projects that want to custody or manage money from other parties. That means that financial markets are being tokenized. If you don't like crypto, you're gonna die in here.
Hi, Cristina.
Hi.
Today we are at VDS podcast. My guest today is Cristina Carrascosa. Welcome. We're going to get to know a little bit about your work. You're a leading tech advisor consultant in Spain, the whole Europe. In your own words, tell us, what do you do, what mission you're on?
So firstly, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be at VDS podcast. I'm a lawyer. I used to do technology law. And back in 2014, I discovered Bitcoin. So I've always been into tech, and recently over the past 10 years into finance. And I saw Bitcoin and the technology behind it was something that a lot of projects could use to build very, very robust products. That took me to, I was working at an international law firm then, but you know, this intersection between finance and technology, which is fintech at the end of the day, at big law firms, it was not like a practice in itself. So I was stuck between the tech team and the finance team, and I discovered that that was not the best way to advise fintech companies. So I started my own law firm. That was back in 2021. Which is 8821. At 8821, we are a team of 15 people now. In 5 years, we've grown from 0 to 15 and from 0 to €1.5 million. And what we do is we actually help teams build products in the fintech space. Our motto is legal by design, because what we like to do is to start with the teams once they are like just drafting the product, and include the compliance of the regulation right from the beginning.
Back in 10 years ago, was it a risky move to change from traditional finance into a completely new world of crypto?
Yes, absolutely. And I always tell this story that is absolutely real, where I told my mother, she used to be a lawyer, and I told her, I'm leaving my job at this big law firm and I'm starting my own one. And she was literally telling me, "You're crazy and I'm not gonna go and look for you in prison once you get there." Yeah, so it was very risky. But you know, it was like this moment where I just knew I couldn't work more at that place, and the clients that we had in the firm came with me. So that was a moment where I thought, not setting up my own organization would be like being very ungrateful for this opportunity. So we're just gonna see what happens. And then I just set up 8821.
At that time in Spain, nobody took Bitcoin, crypto seriously. Did people call you crazy?
Yes. A lot of people call me crazy, and a lot of those people are now trying to work in the crypto space. I must say, I was lucky because I set up 8821 in 2021, but then back in 2018, I was very lucky because the European Commission appointed me for a working group that drafted MiCA. So, you know, it was risky, but I've always had like a very strong legitimacy in the space because I've been here for like more than 10 years. I've always been very transparent. I've always written a lot about the crypto space and the intersection with regulation. I have a Substack where regulators are actually subscribed. So I think I've done like the serious work for many years. So I was crazy. I was told I was crazy because of the move of like this traditional safe finance practice to setting up a practice that did not exist in Spain, at least in 2021.
So for you, it was also a blue ocean in some sense. But let's take a step back. I heard before when we were speaking that you wanted to be a fashion designer. How did this happen that from a dream of becoming a fashion designer, you started consulting crypto companies and create legislation for crypto?
Yeah, and this is something that most people that listen to this podcast are gonna resound very familiar with. So I finished school and then I had to choose what career I wanted to study. I've always been super creative. And it's like a way of my mind flowing and getting this relaxed. So I wanted to study fashion design, but my mother was a lawyer. So she told me, this is literally, I'm quoting literally what she told me, you can choose whatever career you want to do, I'm just going to pay for law. I was 18 back then. I went to a very small private school, so I knew very little about life. So I was feeling like if my mother does not pay for my career, maybe I cannot even do a career. So I said, okay, I'm doing law. But so this was like the agreement we came into. I study law, but every single summer, you're going to pay for the fashion design courses that I want to do. And she was like, okay. So that was what I did. Then I finished the law degree and I found out that I could actually do in the legal space something related to tech. So I went like, okay, I'm going to stay in the space and see what practice looks like. And then I just fell in love with law.
And you found your creativity in a way. How does it work for you? What is this creativity in such a field that some people consider so rigid for you? How do you feel it?
Yeah, I think I really like this question because it's the first time someone asks it. And I really want to have this message where, like you said, law is very perceived as a very rigid job or space. But if you are like brave enough, and I would say stubborn enough, you can like make your own path. Why? So first thing I had on my table was a lot of clients doing very, very strange business models using crypto, AI, financial products. So I thought, if we can actually like master financial regulation, I am sure we can help these clients run their businesses in a compliant way. So it's a very, very big job, but my team knows that I always tell them we have to master the technology our clients are using, and then we have to master the regulation that applies to them. That way, it's very, very funny because at ATH, we usually speak to the product guys, which is not usual for a lawyer. Usually lawyers talk to lawyers. We talk to product guys and sometimes marketing people.
Right.
So the sense of creativity that I get is, for instance, we led the team that did the first token issuance in Spain under the regulated framework. So we had to actually be very creative because it was the first one. We did it with the regulators on our side. So we told them what we want to do. They told us, okay, we're going with you. We're going to check what you're doing. And we did like those. That was I think it was 2018, no MiCA in place. So, it was done like without a proper regulatory framework. Yeah. And we did it. So it took creativity, a very, very deep knowledge of the current regulation. And what we did was we presented the regulator with an issuance that was very similar to the current regulatory framework. So it was easy for them to say, okay, there's no framework for what you're doing, but it's very similar to what other financial companies are doing. So go ahead.
When you just started with ATH 21, what was the hardest part in the beginning? Convincing institutions, navigating this unknown field of industry, convincing people that never heard of crypto. What was that?
I think it was none of those, and I'm going to explain why. I had been training some regulators for quite some time once ATH 21 was incorporated. So regulators actually already knew me. Now, as per clients, I am lucky enough not to have had to go after new clients since I set up ATH 21. And I would say that the hardest thing I've had to confront is actually the corporate stuff at ATH 21. So like the back end of setting up a company. I was a lawyer, I'm a lawyer, and I think and live like a lawyer. So corporate stuff is not my thing. I'm not a businesswoman, I'm a lawyer. So it's like the business kind of stuff, what I find most difficult to do.
I get it.
Yeah.
You're a craftwoman of this sense. You know to do the craft, you know to do the job, but the business part of it, it's the most challenging for most of the professionals.
And I don't
actually.
like it.
Sure, of course, because there's no play and game in it.
Yeah. That's
totally.
it. Yeah.
And one more question, and many people think that crypto regulation is like Wild West, there is no regulation, and you often say it's a myth. Can you explain it?
Yeah, so that was true at least for, I would say, or until 2023 or 2022 actually. Why? So I usually say there are two different and very, very, very differentiated ecosystems with crypto regulation. The first one is like the proper crypto asset ecosystem, where the European Union has actually acknowledged that there's a new class of assets. Mm-hmm. It's nothing like it's a new class of assets and it has its own regulation. That's MiCA and transfer of funds. And then we've got tokenization, where financial markets are being tokenized using the technology that supports tokens, which is blockchain or DLT. Now, this has its own regulation, and it was back in 2022 when the European Union, and it was a pioneer. So this was the first time ever that an institution said, let's try and tokenize financial markets. And they passed by the pilot regime regulation. That was back in 2022. Spain was the first country ever to have a securities law that incorporated this regulation, and Spain was the first country that authorized tokenizing financial instruments. That was a law that I participated in with the government, so we were actually pioneers. Right. So since 2022, we do have a complete regulatory framework for token issuance, stablecoin issuance, and crypto asset service providers on the one side. And on the other side, we've got regulation for tokenizing financial instruments. So I would say we do have like a very complete set of rules that are being now in some sort of way copied by the United States.
MiCA regulation. Do you think the early regulation supports projects, gives them trust processes, or actually kills the innovation?
Hard question for me, because I really like the startup ecosystem. I am a strong believer that innovation always happens in startups. So, but I must be honest, and MiCA is the kind of regulation that, since it's been copied from MiFID, or most of the conditions that companies need to meet are very similar to MiFID, I would say it does not kill innovation, but it does reduce the opportunities for small companies to comply. Why? Because MiCA requires quite a big team and a big infrastructure for the company to have its own authorization. Now, if you're a startup and you need to hire suddenly like 5 guys, that's not going to be something that maybe your budget can hold. But I would say that from like a strict regulatory perspective, MiCA is a very balanced regulation.
Right. You also mentioned once that banks are falling behind in this space while crypto companies are adapting faster. Why does it happen?
Yeah. So this is also a question that I love because I've been confronted many times with this answer that says, banks are the bigger players of the ecosystem. As soon as they want, they're gonna be in the game. We're saying that's not being the case. Why? Because banks are traditional entities that have held a monopoly for centuries. They've been super protected, and usually they've got very elephantic infrastructures, and that means that for them to move into innovative spaces, it takes so many decisions and so much time that usually, even if they want to be there from the beginning, it takes longer for them, okay? Now, that's one thing. The other thing is that banks and regulated entities don't have a tech culture by definition.
Mm-hmm.
They do other stuff, very good. But it's not like a tech-based culture, what you see in these sort of entities. So when you then turn around and see these new sort of fintechs that have been created, and I will mention like Kalshi, PayPal, Revolut, that they were born as tech-based companies with financial products, you can see how fast they take their decisions. You can see like their hierarchies. They are more horizontally organized than the ones in banks. And then you see how they did just the other race. So banks asked for a banking license and then they grew up. Fintechs did the product and then asked for a banking license. And you can see now how good. So yesterday we had the news that PayPal has requested a banking license in the United States. PayPal has 400 million users now.
Yeah, it's one of the global.
Yeah. They've got their own stablecoin. They're rendering crypto services. And they just need a banking license, which is a matter of money and lawyers, let's be honest. So they're doing the race in an inverse way to what banks do, and they're winning. So I always say, if banks do not try, and to be fair, some banks are trying to set up like startups that are very separately from the banking organization, and they're trying to set up teams that can cope with this sort of competition, but it's not working very, very nicely for them. And I would say banks have a little chance of actually getting into, especially with new generations, right, where boomers are very bank-based. But I'm a millennial and I'm more of a Revolut application than my traditional bank one. So it's also a matter of how society is evolving. Nothing is on their side now.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. You've been presenting the projects to the regulatory bodies, presenting before Spanish Congress, European institutions. Do you really think that politicians really understand crypto, or you still speak in different languages?
I would say, I'm going to say two things. Some politicians understand crypto, but because it's their own personal inquiry. But I would add, politicians should not need to know about crypto. If they are good assessed, they should rely on regulators or working projects or working groups that can very, very solidly draft regulations.
Let's talk about something you've been very outspoken about, the digital euro. Is Europe arriving late to the party? What do you say?
Yeah, so it's not a mystery that I am not very fond of the digital euro, mainly for one reason. I am a very, very, very efficient based person. I usually first think, what is this going to bring us for the better? And I'm not seeing that the digital euro is actually going to bring for citizens something better than what we already have. That's like the first and biggest reason. Now, if we take into account that now there's something going on with stablecoins, my point is if the EU has to put the efforts or focus on one thing, do we really want to focus on a digital euro, or do we want to focus on promoting a European stablecoin? Because from what I've heard, the digital euro is an initiative that has been put forward to try and compete with the United States on payment infrastructures.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and sovereignty on money and or whatever. But then again, if that's the problem that we want to address, then the digital euro is, in my opinion, not the best way to do so. Why? Because the digital euro is already designed with some limitations, whereas some European companies that have already issued their own stablecoins have, again, the culture, the users, the technology. They know what is being done in the ecosystem. They are updated on the trends. They do want to go after those users. So I say, and if you see the States, they have even banned the issuance of a central bank digital currency. Mm-hmm. I don't see the point of actually putting all these efforts and resources on a centralized euro that's going to be tokenized, because I rather focus on like fostering and supporting European companies issuing euro stablecoins.
So basically building the infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
What is missing in the current infrastructure? Is it faster payments, networks? What do you see is missing?
So from what I've studied, stablecoins can only be issued by banks or electronic money institutions. So we know some banks are trying to issue their own stablecoin, but then again, I go back to fintech and fintech culture. Banks issuing their own stablecoins is not going to be like a very, very successful product if we have young guys using fintechs and fintech apps. That's my take on it. So my take is, hey, as Europe, let's like detect the 2 or 3 fintechs that have already issued their own stablecoin. Now, that means that we need to detect electronic money institutions that have the will and the strength to issue stablecoins. If we go back in time, electronic money institutions were not a thing in finance because they were very, very, very... so it's like a rare species, because setting up an EMI was very expensive to get that license. And then the possibilities or the things that they could do once they got the authorization granted were not that relevant. Now, since the 2008 crisis, regulation has tried to open the scope of financial products to fintechs. And now fintechs are able to do many more things than before.
Right.
So now it makes sense to incorporate an EMI, but there are very few of them, because back in time, the use case, the successful use case was not that evident.
Totally.
Yeah.
Let's talk about crypto. Let's talk about crypto ecosystem. We've survived a couple of really brutal years. The FTX, Luna, massive hacks. Did you foresee them, or some of them genuinely surprised you, and why this happened in general?
I must say that I'm a very positive person, and I usually do not think that people have the intention of committing fraud. So I did not see any of them coming. I must say that while FTX was a proper scam, I think Luna was just a very bad result of experimenting with innovation. It was the first relevant algorithmic stablecoin. It was the first time people were doing experiments with these double-pegged token stablecoin, and I think it went really bad when one of them depegged. So I would differentiate. I did not see them coming. I do feel like when you want to build up a proper ecosystem, these things need to happen. And I'm not happy that they did, but they have to happen because we need to see the real risks of crypto.
So what you're saying is that it's not always a scam, but immature technology behind it, and many problems can arise from there. What do you say to the companies that are developing a product right now to take into account when building a crypto startup?
I would say that cyber resilience may be the most important aspect of building protocols or projects that want to custody or manage money from other parties. That's I would say the most critical side of a crypto project is their security side, their cyber security side. Every other thing can be managed. If any other aspect explodes, it can be managed. But if you're hacked and you're drained from 3,000 million euros of your users, that's bye for you. Bye-bye.
Let's talk about crypto image in people's minds. We've seen charlatans, we've seen crypto bros, super maximalistic influencers. What do you say to people that are into crypto, how they can spot a crypto charlatan instantly?
Usually, they would have tried to sell something to them. That's the difference that I detect between proper like positive influencers and maybe more negative one. If the person that you're reading, listening to, or whatever tries to get an economic benefit from you reading them or listening to them, beware. Why? Because if you've got something to win or lose out of crypto, then you may be subject to being paid for promoting things.
Totally. And let's see. And now let's talk about tokenization. You said that tokenization can transform the reality, the markets we are living in. What is the EU state on tokenization, and what we can expect in the future?
Okay, so the current state of regulation is that we can actually now replicate a whole financial ecosystem with its players, negotiation, compensation, liquidation, and settlement that can be now replicated using blockchain technology. What does that mean? That means that financial markets are being tokenized. Now, that's being done under pilot regime regulation that we spoke about before. Mm-hmm. And Spain, it was one of the pioneers. And I must say that we do have one of the first market infrastructures authorized in Spain. What is a market infrastructure? Basically, it's a secondary market for financial instruments that have been tokenized. So yes, it's like the new era of financial markets. We have one authorized, but we've got 4 in the pipeline. So that means Spain may have in the next 2 to 3 months 5 market infrastructures. Those are like super new kind of companies with totally tokenized infrastructures, being 24/7 markets that can actually list and negotiate financial assets, but in the form of tokens. So I would say what we can expect in the next years is one, the United States is also now saying that they will tokenize their financial instruments. And we know the States has a very solid economy that lives from financial markets. So I'm sure they're going to do that. They just have to copy what we've done in Europe for the first time, maybe in time. The States is going to copy us. Yeah. But what we are doing here in Europe, I'm super lucky to have witnessed it and to work with it, because we are reinventing financial markets, and that's what we can expect in the next years.
How do states and central banks feel about it? Is it a threat to them, or the system will eventually work organically in harmony?
I would say central banks and regulators feel like this is something that, I mean, it's hard because it's new to them, but it's not a threat. Definitely from what I've been able to see and work, it's definitely not a threat. Who is feeling threatened here? It's banks and traditional regulated entities. Those are the ones now just asking like, what are we going to do? How are we going to face this? What's our strategy now? Those are the questions now on the table.
Is it because of lack of information? It's a new instrument, it's uncertainty, or they're really trying to protect the population?
Nah, I would say it's more that they still don't understand very thoroughly what is this all about.
So they need to still figure out, they need more time to get in the space and really touch the base and get like, okay, this is safe.
An example is like banks, no? So banks are now trying to decide whether they're going to issue their own stable coin, or they're going to just be like a crypto asset service provider, or they're going to become a whole fintech with all the range of products. So, now we've got like crypto asset service providers like Kraken that have the crypto asset platform.
Right.
They now have market infrastructures. So they are actually selling and commercializing financial instruments. So that's a mix of like a bank and a regulated entity. Then you've got fintechs like PayPal trying to become banks. And then you've got the banks seeing everything that's happening and just saying like, what? What are these new companies doing all these services that usually and traditionally were just separated and rendered from different companies? What are we going to do about it?
Yeah, because they're so diverse, right?
Yeah.
Each infrastructure is diverse, each company is diverse, and I think the banks and the regulators, they struggle to understand the scope of what can be done with the blockchain, what can be done with the crypto, right?
Yeah.
You recently participated in the discussions with title like Bitcoin 2026. An instrument or civil disobedience. Do you genuinely believe that Bitcoin can be financial resilience, a form of a state of financial resilience, or it's just a romantic narrative?
That's a tough one. I myself have Bitcoin as a romantic way of civil disobedience, which is something I've repeated like many times. Now, I do think, and I may be wrong, but I do think that in this global economy that we're seeing now, like in this sort of post-capitalism era, where we're saying that not many economies are doing great right now, I think Bitcoin may become an asset that can perform, just like in the opposite way. So I always say that if things weren't this broken, Bitcoin would not be at the price it's in. I think so. Yeah.
Right. So let's switch to the other topic, which is personal relations and your approach to leadership, to running a company, entrepreneurship, being woman in tech, in fintech. You give talks, you advertise, you give talks, you advise institutions, you run a law firm. How do you manage all these things, and what helps you disconnect?
So actually, I set up 8821 in April. And I discovered in May of the same year that I was pregnant.
Oh.
Yeah. That's a funny story, yeah. So I think that something that women in tech or women in running their own businesses need to know, and I'm sure many of them already know, is that you need a good team, a very good team, you will not do this on your own, that you need to have a lot of passion in what you do. I'm super sure that if I was not in fintech, I would not be in the space for 10 years. It's something that I love to do. It's something that I do like even in my spare time. This morning I woke up at 6 and I was taking my coffee and I was reading some like news on the financial side, and it's something that comes out of me. So it's something that when I'm working, I don't really have the sense that I'm working.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that I work 24/7, which is something I do not do, because in my priority scale, first thing is family. And that's something I'm not gonna reorganize. That means that when my kid needs me or when I want to be with my kid, I will not pick up the phone. How can I do this? Being very organized. Waking up early in the mornings, being very organized and very efficient. Something I always tell my team, and this is something very rare. ATH as a company has a benefit. So it has like a benefit rate of around 40%. Every euro that we get into our bank, 40 cents is benefit, which is very rare. How have we achieved this? Being efficient with our time. So my team does not have to be at the office from 8 to 7, but they do have to get things done in a very strict timeline. So there's someone in my team who likes to play paddle, and they go and play paddle at 5. But she knows that things need to get done before 5.
How do you achieve this level of efficiency and this level of alignment with your team? What helps you to be so aligned and have the team that doesn't drag you down, that doesn't waste your time, but actually supports and elevates you?
I would say that the first thing it does not come from me, it comes from them, and it's interest. Something that we repeat a lot in our interviews is that if you don't like crypto, you're gonna die in here. Because we are all day speaking about finance, financial assets. So if you don't like it, this is not your place. Now, the next thing is if you like it, we are gonna teach you everything we know. And we're gonna do it in a very, 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 I would say, familiar ecosystem, because we are 15, but we laugh a lot. We have good times together. So like the ecosystem is gonna be great. This is something I really protect. And we have fired people from the team because they did not have the same feeling. This is very important for us. And then the message is you're gonna have a life, but once you get into the office, it's focus on the work.
Right.
And it's working up to now. It's working.
I think that's a great consolation to be 100% focused on what you're doing and play hard and work hard.
Yeah.
Let's talk about difficult decisions. Running a law firm, advising very serious institutions, working with very diverse, sometimes immature, sometimes rough clients. What were the most rough decisions you had to make? And what it led you to?
Yeah. I think the first very hard decision I had to take was after having my child. I did have a partner, another shareholder in the company. He did not come from crypto, and it was perfectly clear that his ambition and his sacrifice for the company was not at the same level as mine. So after having my child, I actually spoke to him and said, I think you are not promoting the same level as passion as I am to the team. So I think it's better for you to leave the company. Why was it difficult? It was difficult because he knew it was a matter of money because I wanted him out. So he asked for an amount of money that, it wasn't worth it, but I had to pay it because I wanted him out.
Of course.
So that was the first situation I encountered where I told to myself, I think you're now being a businesswoman. Those corporate stuff that I don't like, okay? Now, the next ones have been more about, and it's really funny because it's been about more team alignment and culture and actually customer or client decisions. Those for me are easy. If we have to let down a client or if we had to face a very tough conversation, I can do that. That's in my salary. I'm doing that straight away. But if it's a matter of the team, if it's a matter of someone having an attitude that goes against the values that we've set, that's complicated for me. Yeah, I do find that tough.
I see. But as a lawyer, it's a part of your
I know.
It's a part of your delicacy and diplomacy job. So I really see such an amazing, admirable woman who actually gives an amazing example to the younger generations, to the employees, to the crypto enthusiasts, that it is possible to run a crypto business, a crypto firm, like crypto-related service ethically, powerfully, with creativity, whatever it is. So for people that want to enter crypto tech, finance tech fields, what is the advice you could give to them?
I've got a fixed tweet in my Twitter timeline, and it starts with reputation is more important than your paycheck. And I'm one of my biggest characteristics is that I'm a long-term person. I've always been. So no short-term for me. I would say for anyone who wants to do something long-lasting in life and impactful in life, and whoever wants to have some sort of legacy wherever it is, if it's law or finance or if it's art, think in the long term.
Right.
So take your decisions based on whether they're going to put you where you want to be in 10 years' time. That's like the biggest thing I could say to them.
There are no workarounds, there are no schemes, there are no quick fixes that many people think about crypto. It's still a consistent job and reputation, as you just said. Yeah. Nobody can take it away, and this is the only thing that stays with you for your whole life.
Yeah.
Let's do a quick fire round. The book or resource that everyone should read.
Oh, nice. Oh, wow. Okay. So it doesn't have to do with crypto, but it does have to do with crypto. That's The Sovereign Individual. I can remember, it's two authors. I cannot remember the names, but The Sovereign Individual, that's like a bestseller. It's about, actually, it's a book about anthropology and how humans are developing. But it was written back in the 80s, and it nails down completely what we're living now.
Interesting.
Yeah,
cool.
So definitely.
Someone in the crypto space that you admire, but maybe sometimes disagree.
I think this one is super clear for me. That's Vitalik. He's a super smart guy, and that's obvious. But he's been able to keep his own criteria. He gets to explain his own opinions so neatly that even if you disagree with him, you can understand his point. And he's been able to cope with so much pressure all these years, so much pressure, that I think he's one of those positive influences in the crypto space.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
So last one thing that people never guessed about you, like one thing that people would never guess about you. What's that?
There are a few of them. Maybe I would say, this is very good one. I'm a super introvert. Yeah. So I've got very low social battery. I find it super hard to speak to people. I I don't, so I've got like a very close social family, and I'm a very, 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 very consolidated introvert.
Cristina, it was phenomenal conversation. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here
Likewise.
with me, sharing your wisdom, sharing your knowledge, your leadership, your energy. Last thing, how people can learn about you, connect with you. We leave probably the links in the description and share your work with them.
Thank you so much. Thank you.